The British policeman is a friend to all except the criminal. He is taught that the police are the servants, not the masters of the public, and that it is their duty to be ready at all times to protect and befriend all those who need help. Whatever the trouble is, people know that the policeman will deal with the situation efficiently and without fuss. Advice is readily sought from them on a great variety of personal problems, even on the correct way in which an old age pension form should be completed. Nothing is too trivial, nothing is too serious for his attention, and he thereby becomes a good friend of the people. They have learned to trust and respect him. Friend to all.
A police officer who was filmed pushing a man to the ground during the G20 protests in London last year will not face charges over his death.
Servants.
I asked him to identify himself and he refused.
Not the masters of the public.
A police riot squad officer who provoked national outrage by hitting a G20 protester with a metal baton has been cleared of assault.
Protect and befriend all those who need help.
The shocking brutality that earned a police sergeant a criminal conviction. Custody Sergeant Mark Andrews, a former soldier, was caught on CCTV grabbing hold of her in the station lobby and dragging her across the floor. He then shoved her into a cell. Ms. Somerville, then aged 57, was filmed lying on the floor before struggling to get up with blood pouring from her head.
Not the masters of the public.
This is all good for you. You do not have a right to come up and start using my camera. I'm not pushing you. You did. Shut up. And the camera's on. What? Shut up.
A good friend of the people. Trust, 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 and respect him.
Now, the Metropolitan Police are facing a compensation bill of £250,000 after admitting a raid on a climate change group the day after the G20 protest last April was illegal. Police burst into the Convergence Centre in East London carrying taser guns and handcuffed protesters face down. The Metropolitan Police Commissioner admitted it was unlawful to arrest, search them and force them to be recorded on film, but he refused to apologise.
Protect, and befriend all those who need help.
A patrol car chased a 70-year-old driver down country roads in Monmouthshire after they spotted him failing to wear a seatbelt. He was reportedly followed for 17 minutes. When they caught up with him, the officers smashed his windows and kicked in his windscreen.
Efficiently and without fuss.
The incident is being investigated now by the Independent Police Complaints Commission.
Servants.
It was a defining moment in British policing when two firearms officers walked up to a passenger on the London Underground and shot him in the head.
Protect.
Shut up and listen to me. Okay? You remain custody now, and you will be quiet and you will listen.
Not the masters of the public.
On my throat!
Camera recording.
And then he sort of came to me and sort of pushed my head down. When he stood me up, he put his hands around my neck.
Not the masters. Servants, protect.
If you work in law enforcement, I have a very important question for you, one which soon may be a matter of life or death. I'm sure some people become police officers just so they can boss other people around. But I'm going to assume here that you mean well, that you want to be one of the good guys. In which case, my question is this. Is there anything the politicians could enact into law that you wouldn't enforce? Is there any order that you would refuse to carry out? Or will you do absolutely anything your bosses tell you to? You may be comfortable in assuming that you'll never receive an order to do something truly immoral. But the fact is, with every order you receive, you have a choice between obeying without question or relying on your conscience. Yet police have since been ordered to do all of these things, and almost without exception they obeyed. So it's not unreasonable to ask, is there any point at which you will draw a line and say, no, that I will not do? And if you won't draw such a line anywhere, if you will do absolutely anything your political masters tell you to, how are you any different from the enforcers of Soviet Russia, Red China, or Nazi Germany? You may be tempted to say, I don't make the law, I just enforce it. Or to argue that if some legislature, court, or some authority above you says it's okay, then it must be. But keep in mind that this is exactly what the thugs of every tyrannical regime in history said to justify their actions. And how do we remember those people now? As courageous, noble law enforcers? No. Unless you want posterity remembering you as a heartless, mindless pawn of oppression, then you'd better decide, and decide now, where you will draw that line. Unfortunately, there's little indication that most cops have any line at all. The incidents of police officers refusing to inflict injustice upon the people are extremely rare. For the most part, cops seem completely incapable of disobeying immoral orders, and instead do what the enforcers of every other authoritarian empire have done, inflicting harm on innocent people whenever and however those in power tell them to, while accepting no personal responsibility for their actions. I hope you are better than that. Now, if someone is actually harming someone else, of course you have the right to use whatever force necessary to stop the attacker and protect the innocent. But that would be the case even if you had no badge and no uniform. But when you try to arrest someone who hasn't threatened or harmed anyone else, but has only disobeyed some arbitrary regulation, then you are the one initiating force. You are the one starting a fight. You are the bad guy. Of course, the message you'll get from your superiors, the politicians, and your fellow officers is that it's not your place to decide which laws to enforce, and that as long as you faithfully follow orders, that you can't be held personally responsible for doing as you're told. But that is a lie, a horribly dangerous lie. At the Nuremberg trials, it was established that the excuse used by the Nazi law enforcers that they weren't to blame and shouldn't be punished because they were just doing as they were told did not relieve them of personal responsibility for their actions. And make no mistake, if you choose to blindly obey unjust commands, and one day your intended victims decide to fight back, saying that you're just doing your job will not make you bulletproof. It may be your own life you save by deciding now at what point you will choose to be a moral, responsible human being instead of just an obedient pawn of those in power. Ultimately, only you can answer the question of where you will draw that line. But really, the only moral, rational answer is this. If something would be wrong for you to do without a badge, then you shouldn't do it with one either. The idea that uniforms and legislation can give you special rights is both false and horribly dangerous. Nearly every large-scale injustice in history was committed by people who wrongly imagined that their position of authority made it okay for them to do things that other people have no right to do. Like everyone else, you have the right to use force to stop attackers and protect the innocent, and when you do that, you are the hero. But you have no right to be the attacker, even if it's your job, and even if the aggression is called law. Always, in every situation, you and you alone are responsible for what you do. Wearing a badge and a uniform and doing whatever you're told does not make you brave and noble or deserving of any respect. Just following orders is a coward's excuse. If your job requires you to assault or cage people who haven't threatened or harmed anyone, then quit. Being an actual protector, doing the right thing no matter what anyone else says, even if it means disobeying orders and breaking the law, that takes courage and integrity. That makes you a hero. So, do you have enough of a spine to draw that line? Decide now, before your failure to think for yourself results in damage that cannot be undone.